We are going to end the absurdity of 400,000 people in America today who are in jail. Do you know why 400,000 people are in jail today? Because they're too poor to find and pay for cash bail. In other words, we have a debtor's prison. If you're poor, we're going to lock you up. We are going to end the so-called war on drugs, which has destroyed so many lives.
Presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders has unveiled a sweeping criminal justice reform package. He previewed that proposal Sunday during a speech in South Carolina. Covers a variety of issues, including decreasing the prison population, eliminating for-profit prisons, and abolishing the death penalty.
Senator Sanders also wants to legalize safe injection sites. The controversial practice would allow people to use illegal drugs under medical supervision. Joining us to expand on the senator's 6,000-word proposal is the campaign senior advisor, Chuck Rocha. Chuck, welcome.
It's good to be here.
Good to see you, sir.
We're stepping on up in this thing here.
Y'all have been busy.
Woo.
Plan after plan after plan.
Don't tell me you got a plan, because we got a plan too now.
So let's start with criminal justice reform. Tell us what's in the plan, and also talk a little bit, we're friends. We've talked personally about why does this matter to you so much?
This is a big reason that I went to work for this campaign. The system is so unjust. And as the senator said, we would love to see half of this prison population who are pretty much in jail because they can't afford not to be in jail, that are in jail. Look, if you did something bad and you want to be punished, you should go to jail and you should have the full punishment of the U.S. government behind you. But there are just so many people who are in jail because they are poor and because they made a simple mistake. And as you've talked about, people may not realize this, but I have a non-violent felony on my record, right? And so that would make you think that I would be hard to employ. And that's a fact. If I went to a restaurant down the street here and applied to go to work there, I'd have to check a box that says I have a criminal record and that I have a felony conviction. It wouldn't ask if it's a $500 felony. It would just say felony. And I never forget the time when Bernie and Jeff Weaver hired me in 2015. I was very forthright about this, and I've rebuilt my life. I haven't let this crime and this mistake define who I am, and I've literally rebuilt my life, and I'm so proud of what I have done, proud of the opportunities that people have given me.
Yeah.
But I remember Jeff Weaver looking across the table at me and going, well, wasn't that in your past, and haven't you already paid for that? And I was like, yes, sir. And he goes, well, how long should you be punished for a crime and a mistake you made 10 years ago? And it was at that very point I knew I would work for Bernie Sanders for the rest of my life. And that's what is so special.
Thank you, Chuck.
That's an amazing story. So can you tell us more then about how he is looking to reform the prison system and some of the things that he's actually doing to help people who went through things like you did?
I think that one of the big things is programs that when you get out of jail and you come out of the criminal system, there's really not a safety net there to help you, train you, figure out what's next for you. Because a lot of people who realize they went into jail maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years, have literally changed. They don't know what to do. So if there's programs put in place to help them reintegrate into society through educational programs, working with nonprofits, there's great places here in DC like the DC Kitchen and other places where you can get the skills, right? Back to my story is I realized I had a safety net around me, a family and friends. I started a consulting firm. I had a lot of people who understood what I had went through and gave me an opportunity. That's not really there if you don't have that system. If you don't have those family members, if you don't have the church, if you don't have nonprofits, if you don't have customers who will say, we would love to work with you, right? Or a validator like Bernie Sanders who says, I don't care if you have a criminal record. I want you to be a part of our family. I want you to help us. That's far and few between. That is the exception, not the norm.
Yeah. One of the things that Senator Sanders has proposed, which has been perhaps most controversial, is allowing people who are currently incarcerated to vote. Now, one of the things I talked about on the show this week is, not only is power stripped from people when they enter the criminal justice system, but they're still counted in the census. So their physical bodies are used typically to increase political power in red, rural America to support politicians and ideas that have done tremendous harm to them. But speak from a campaign perspective of why that particular item is so important, because, look, you would not find any focus group of Midwestern moms who are like, yes, we should let the drug dealers vote. Why does the senator want to make this an issue?
I've worked in this business for 30 years, and there's always politicians who are worried about saying what the pollsters tell them to say or what somebody says they should say because it helps in Iowa or it helps in New York or whatever. Bernie Sanders is just a purist. He's always going to say exactly what he feels and what he thinks is best for people, whether you agree or disagree. And I remember asking the question. I forgot which meeting I was in. It was part of the campaign. And I was like, what? And the answer to me is if we start picking and choosing, and saying these people can vote and these people can't vote and these people can vote, where does that stop? And who do we put in control of that? Everybody should have a right to vote. Sure, it may not look good on paper for somebody who'd done some violent crime, right? But if you start eliminating people out, where do you stop and where do you start? Who does that? To be safe, he just says everybody should have that right. Right.
Interesting.
So do you see a lot of pushback then, like while you're on the campaign trail, people asking a lot of questions about whether or not this is actually a good idea, or what are the main criticisms, especially in places like Iowa, which I know right now you're playing to primary voters and trying to get through that, but what if you made it to the general election? How are you going to appeal to a broader array of people? You know,
I think that it's a issue, whether it's criminal justice reform, whether it's the new Green Deal, whether it's the union proposal that we put up, there's different issues that different people care about. And I just got back, as you said, from 3 days in Iowa. And people don't run up to me and talk to me about our stance in Iowa about criminal justice reform or about our letting felons vote. The things that's on people's mind today, on the front of their mind, this may be on the back of their mind, but on the front of their mind is normally health care. Normally it's educating my kids. It's normally the taxes that I'm paying. It's normally the trade deals that sent jobs overseas. It's those real life kitchen table issues that people come up and talk to me. Does this issue play into the overall narrative? It will, and it will at some point in time, but I don't ever think it'll be the leading issue, right? I think that that's why people like me who have had a criminal past, other people are forgotten about at some point, right? Because it's not on the front of people's mind. We just always say those people, but what we shouldn't forget is that those people are real people.
Well, and not to mention those people often aren't even able to vote, right, to have a say in this. So that's another reason why the importance of the issue is it's really undervalued. As I mentioned, y'all have been very busy. 3 major plans in the course of a week: criminal justice, union power, and now today unveiling a major Green New Deal climate change plan. First of all, let's talk at a high level. I mean, why is so much being rolled out now? What's sort of the strategy behind that?
Well, if you work in presidential politics, you have policy teams that start working on what your policy positions are. Our policy team has a pretty easy job because we know what Bernie Sanders is going to talk about, because it's the same thing he's been talking about for 30 years, and he's been very, very consistent. But we want to make sure that we rolled out policies and nuances that were adding to things he had already said that are what truly he believes in. And we started this 3 and 4 months ago. But Crystal, instead of just hurrying up and rolling out things all of a sudden to show we had a plan, people knew Bernie Sanders always had a plan. If we want to give the details of the plan, we've just now finished all of those plans we've been working on for months and months, and they just happen to be all rolling out at the same time. It wasn't something that we were holding going, we're going to do all this in 1 week. No, we had a whole team of people who've been working on it for a long time, and these are the issues that are core to what he believes in. Yeah. What was first? Health care. Now we're talking about unions. We're talking about the environment. We're talking about criminal justice reform. These are the bedrocks of where he is as a person, and the movement is around him.
There's a Washington Post article this morning on health care saying that Senator Sanders has changed his view vis-a-vis Medicare for all and unions. Can you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, my Twitter literally was blowing up last night. My phone was smoking. I was like, what's going on?
For being honest.
Right? I was like, good Lord. So nothing changed. Our Medicare for all has never changed. It's not going to change. And the guy who wrote it last night with the senator was on Twitter saying, this is all a big false. We have not changed anything. But what we did do is say in the union proposal that as somebody who's negotiated union contracts for a long, long time, I started a union when I was 19. Every time, over the last 10 years of my union negotiation, every increase in pay that we would have got for our employees went towards what? Health care. Because the premiums went up every year, right? So what we're saying today is that shouldn't happen anymore under a Medicare for all system. What we know we're going to do is save employers a ton of money in bureaucracy, in costs, and overall things, and that money shouldn't be given to shareholders, that money should be given to the union and all of those wages that they've negotiated backwards over years to pay for their own health care.
So basically, just to make sure I understand this correctly, if Medicare for all is instituted, union members will have an opportunity at that time to go in and renegotiate their contracts so that they can claim that increase in wages now that the health care is being provided in a different way. Is that basically how this is working? That's the idea?
Absolutely. Okay. Because I worked for an international union, I can promise you that over the last 10, 5, 15 years, every increase that these folks have gotten at the negotiating table has went towards their health care. And this is going to make sure that money that they have been sacrificing to pay for that health care, if the employer is going to be saved that money, it should go back to the employees.
Gotcha. Chuck, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Next up on Rising, a checkup on the current state of the economy.
Economics professor Richard Wolff explains what signs have experts concerned about a possible recession when Rising continues.